Hello humans, I am the Black Cat, and welcome to Movie Review Monday. This week, we take a look at VHS. VHS is an anthology movie, basically a collection of short films that all have the same basic theme. In this case, it's found footage films. Now, I know found footage movies have had a bad rap, considering since the Blair Witch Project came out, everyone and their mother are making found footage movies. And to be fair, not all of them were good. Some of them were just downright terrible. But even in the world of found footage, there are some gems to be found. Is VHS one of those gems? Let's find out. So the first story we're presented to is Tape 56. This is the story that's meant to tie all the stories together, the narrative story. So Tape 56 revolves around a group of 4 guys. My notes literally just say horrible people. Basically, they go around filming themselves attacking women and vandalizing old houses. You know, real upstanding members of society. One of the guys boasts about how they're able to make $50 for each video they make. Then one of the other guys says that he's been offered more money to break into a house and retrieve a specific videotape. So they all agree to go and break into this house. When they get there, they find a dead guy in a room with a bunch of TVs and VCRs. One of the guys is told to stay there and check the tapes in the VCRs, while the other guys search the rest of the house. Why they would decide to watch each tape while they're there and not just grab all the tapes they find and check them later, I have no idea. Because they're morons, probably. So the guy sits down in front of the dead guy and starts watching the tapes. This leads us to our first official story. Amateur Night introduces us to 3 friends who are going out clubbing. The main guy, I believe his name was Shane. Honestly, I don't remember if they mentioned any of the other guys' names, so I'm just going to refer to them as Blonde Guy and Glasses Guy. I'm sure they had names, but I don't know if they mentioned them or not. So Shane gives Glasses Guy some glasses that also happen to be video glasses, or spy glasses, so he can film their night. Apparently, the plan is to pick up some girls and film them having sex with them, which, when you think about it, would be really weird. I mean, the main idea is that because the camera is hidden, the girls don't know that they're being filmed. But the guy has to wear the glasses. So is he just going to be awkwardly staring at them while they're having sex? It seems a bit weird. But anyway, they get to a club and they meet some girls. Shane meets a pretty normal girl, and Glasses Guy meets a strange girl who just says, "I like you." Eventually, the blonde guy gets into a fight in the club and they get kicked out. So the 3 guys and the 2 girls go to a hotel room. Shane and the normal girl start kissing and carrying on, but she soon passes out because they're all drunk. Thankfully, they realize she's asleep and he stops what he's doing. He's disappointed, but then he turns his attention to the strange girl. She doesn't seem to mind his advances so much, but she doesn't want the blonde guy to get involved. Personally, I believe that when she saw him getting violent in the club, she decided that he was some kind of threat, and so that's why she instantly didn't like him. So while the girl and Shane are getting busy, blonde guy kind of invites himself to get involved. And of course, she bites him. Realizing something's wrong with this girl, they try to talk to Shane, but she kills him. Glasses Guy manages to get out of the room while she's killing the blonde guy. He runs out of the room and runs down the stairs where he falls and breaks his wrist. It's a bit hard to watch the part where he's running down the stairs because the camera kind of goes all over the place. You know, that classic shaky cam. I found myself kind of squinting at that point because it was hard to watch. So he falls down and breaks his wrist. He's lying on the ground in agony. The girl finds him and again she tells him that she likes him. And then she, from what I could tell, tries to please him. But of course he's in pain and scared, so naturally he's unresponsive to that. She realizes that he doesn't like it and this upsets her. While she's crying, he manages to slip out and tries to run for help, but nobody really helps him and eventually she catches up with him. This story I felt was an interesting concept. Demon girl looking for a mate. The inclusion of the glasses makes sense for the story. I mean, it would be weird if this guy was carrying a camera filming everything. So having the glasses act as the camera, I think, worked really well. There is full frontal small nudity, both male and female, but for the context of the story, that also made sense. There was no awkward attempt to cover up. I mean, the guy was literally in a life or death situation. He didn't have time to be like, oh hang on, let me just put on some shorts real quick. Special effects wise, I believe it was mostly practical effects, and it looked pretty good. Really liked the lighting effects in the hotel room after she initiated her attack. There's a great shot of her standing in the middle of the room with her arms kind of crossed over her head, and with the way the light was, she's completely in shadow. She's just a silhouette. So it looks really interesting because she looked fascinating. You couldn't quite tell what she was. There was still elements of a woman there, but it was off. I think that shot is probably the best shot in the entire film. I also really liked the makeup effects. In the beginning, there was just a hint of a line on her forehead that becomes more pronounced as the night progresses, until toward the end when she's like in full demon mode, it's completely open. I thought that was a really cool detail. One thing I didn't like so much, this is more of a personal preference thing, that was the sound effects. Because the guy was wearing the glasses, when they kissed, the sound of the kissing was really loud. Plus, I watched this movie with headphones on, so it was like it was right in my ear. I hated that. Then there's more slurpy sounds that I could have done without. This short was eventually turned into a full-length movie called Siren. I have seen the movie, but I don't remember being too impressed with it. I mean, I've only seen it once. Usually if I like a movie, I'll watch it more than once, you know? I think the short films work because there's no need for drawn-out character introductions. There's no need for explanations about who or what the monster is, but in a feature-length movie you need to include more stuff, right? Obviously, because it's longer. So for me personally, I think the short was way better than the full-length movie. Then we cut back to tape 56 with the guys looking for the videotape. The guy who was watching the tapes in the room is now missing. Two of the other guys go to the basement and find a bunch of videotapes in the basement. The main guy tells the guy with the camera to go and find a bag or something so they can take all the tapes. So the guy with the camera goes to find a bag. As he's looking around, I was thinking there would be something subtle hiding in the background, and I was trying to look for, you know, things here and there. But no, naked guy just runs past in full view. I'm not sure who the naked guy was supposed to be. I don't think he was ever seen again, unless the old guy in the chair was supposed to be that guy, but in the beginning he has clothes on, and then in the end when we see him again he still has clothes on, so who was the naked guy? Anyway, camera guy tells the other guy, but of course he doesn't believe him. Back in the TV room, the next guy decides to watch a tape instead of just collecting them and getting out. That leads us to our next story. Second honeymoon starts with a couple documenting their road trip. They stop at an old west town and they find a fortune-telling machine and decide to give it a go. The fortune tells them a new turn of events will come about and something about reuniting with a loved one. They go to a hotel for the night and a mysterious woman knocks on their door and asks if they could give her a lift in the morning. Obviously they find this sketchy, but by the morning the woman is gone. For some reason they decide to sleep in separate beds. The girl who's filming everything makes a comment about how they couldn't get a room with one bed and they got separate beds. So then I don't understand that she felt that meant that they need to sleep in separate beds. I don't know. It was very strange. Anyway, while they're sleeping, someone enters their room and decides to use the same camera to film themselves perving on the girl and stealing money. The next night the person is back in their room and filming, and then the girl kills the guy, and it turns out that the mysterious woman and the girl were in a relationship and this was planned apparently. Honestly, it was kind of predictable and compared to the last one, kind of boring. There's no supernatural element. There isn't any suspense or mystery. The only mystery is what was the couple's relationship. I mean, obviously they were supposed to be like a romantic couple, but were they married? The title of the story is Second Honeymoon, but it didn't seem like they were a married couple. Was the second honeymoon implying for the girl and the mysterious woman? They seemed more like a couple that had broken up and were trying to get back together, but then why would she if she's in a relationship with someone else? I don't understand. Remember when I said short films films don't need to explain everything, well, sometimes it's good to have some explanation or some clarification. Of course, good writing, directing, and acting can convey complex stories without having to spell everything out for the audience, but that doesn't seem to be present in this one. Also, like I said, for the first one as well, the inclusion of the camera needs to make sense in the context of the story, but with this one, it didn't really make sense. I mean, they're planning to kill this guy for some reason. Why would you film it? In my opinion, this is one of the weaker stories. There's another one that's worse, but we'll get to that. Back to the guys in the house. The two guys that were in the basement go to the TV room to find that the other guy has also disappeared. So one of the guys stays there to continue checking the tapes. Again, while the other one goes to find where the other guys went to. It did become a little repetitive, like it's just the same thing that keeps happening in each section, but I guess it's just a filler type of thing, so it doesn't need to be that deep. Anyway, on to the next story. Tuesday the 17th. This story follows a group of friends going on another trip, to a lake. So apparently Wendy, who's driving the car, says that she goes to this lake every year by herself, but this time she invites some friends. They didn't seem to be close. They didn't know each other very well. She tells the other woman that it's just going to be the girls, and she tells one of the guys that it's just going to be him and her, which they find out about in the car on the way to the lake. But after the initial, like, wait a minute, you told me this and you told them that, it was kind of just dropped and it wasn't brought up again later. But that made it obvious that she pretty much lied to them to get them to come along. At this point, I'm already predicting they're a sacrifice of some kind. So basically, the premise is that a few years ago, Wendy and her friends were attacked by some psycho killer, and Wendy was the only one who survived. She explained that the killer seems to be everywhere at once, but no one believed her. So she invites these people along with a camera with the intent to film the killer and get proof, basically using these people as bait. But when the killer does show up, it's kind of like Slender Man. When he gets close, the camera glitches and she can't film him. His name in the credits is literally The Glitch. The effect of the glitch was pretty cool. The characters in this have a little more depth to them. They're not just horny teenagers. I mean, there was a bit of that, but there was more to them than just that. The ending was okay, but it was a bit over the top. Also, can we not have people killed by having a camera slammed lens first into their face? It's kind of stupid. Overall, I thought this story was pretty enjoyable. Anyway, back to the guys in the house. The next guy that was in the room has now disappeared. So this story is a little different because it takes place over a video call between a guy and a girl. I'm not sure what their relationship was supposed to be. Clearly romantic as she flashes him, which was unnecessary because in dialogue she tells him she wants to support him once he becomes a doctor. So I'm guessing he's away at school or something, or maybe it's a long distance relationship. She mentions that she's been hearing noises in her apartment. He doesn't seem to believe her until he sees something on the camera. She's convinced there's a ghost in her apartment. There's a couple of attempted jump scares, but they weren't really that effective. Anyway, one night she tells him she's going to try and talk to the ghost in a weird, convoluted way that makes it so that we can actually see what she's doing. She carries her laptop while they're on a video call so that he can see what she's doing or what's happening in the room, and by extension we can see what's happening. It's really weird. Somehow she gets knocked out. I'm not sure how that happened, unless the supposed alien creatures knocked her out somehow. But then when she's knocked out, the guy comes into the room. So apparently he's in the next apartment or something. These weird children that are supposed to be some kind of alien creatures are apparently using her as a surrogate for their babies. He's training to be a doctor to help them. He cuts her open to take out the baby, but he cuts her along her ribs on her back and then feels around. Like, dude, clearly there's no baby between her ribs and her skin. She would have noticed. The effect of ribs under the skin was pretty good though. It was a good use of practical effects, even though the alien children things looked Halloween makeup-y. Then he's like, I'll have to make it look like an accident. So he breaks her arm and convinces her that she ran out and got hit by a car. She tells him she loves him, but then it cuts to him basically having the same conversation with another girl who also flashes him because, you know, we need more boobs on camera. I think the flashing stuff was completely unnecessary. They could have left the boobs out of it and it wouldn't have affected the story scary at all. This one I think is probably my least favourite story in the whole thing. So back to the guys watching the videos. There's only one guy left now and he quickly gets killed. So that's pretty much it. The story of tape 56 with the guys in the house, it didn't really go anywhere. 10/31/98, or as we in Australia would say, 31/10/98, basically 31st of October, Halloween. So this story follows a group of guys going to a Halloween party. One guy is dressed up as a nanny cam, basically a teddy bear with a camera in his head or in the bear's head, which gives an explanation for the camera presence, which again makes sense for the context of the story. They go to a house that they think is where the party should be, but the house is completely empty. I think there was only like one time where someone said, "Are you sure this is the right house?" And they were just kind of like, yeah, this is it. There was no, "This house is empty, there's nobody here, surely we're in the wrong house, right?" But no, they ignored that idea and just go ahead and go into this house, this random house. Then they assumed that it's a haunted house theme, you know, like those places you go into where they have people who are actors chase you and stuff, that kind of thing. They think this is what the party is about. So they start walking through. Bear guy sees some stuff, but they assume it's all part of the gimmick. Eventually they start hearing noises upstairs, so they find their way to the attic, where they find some men performing some kind of ritual with the girl tied up. At first they think this is all part of the show, but they realize that it's real and they start to run out. Apparently the men were performing an exorcism on the girl. I didn't get that when I watched it. I thought they were performing some kind of ritual, but I didn't realize it was an exorcism. So the guys take off. They're almost out of the house when they hear the girl calling for help, and they decide that they can't just leave her. They have to go and save her, which, fair enough. Good for them. So they go back up to try and save the girl. They manage to get her after some fighting, but then as they're trying to leave, something weird is happening with the house. Doors are disappearing, things are floating around, there's birds flying through rooms, all sorts of shit. Eventually, they manage to get out with the girl, but their car stalls down the road and the woman disappears. They see her standing outside of the car. They realize that the car is stopped on a train tracks and they can't get out. This story, honestly, I thought was great. It's a simple setup. It has the best effects out of all of them, really. It was CGI mostly, but it was used well. The tension building when the guys are trying to get out of the house is pretty good. You're wanting them to get out. The house itself was confusing because there wasn't a lot of establishment with the layout of the house, but I think that also added to the story because the characters weren't familiar with the house either because they'd never been there before. Plus, doors are disappearing, literally stopping them from escaping. So I think the confusion about the layout of the house also added to the story because they were trying to find a way out and were confused, so it made sense that the audience also didn't know how to get out of the house. Overall, this I think was the best story out of all of them. It was simple, it made sense mostly, and the effects were pretty good. I think 10/31/98 was definitely number one for me. Amateur Night would probably be number 2. Tuesday the 17th would come in 3rd, with Second Honeymoon being the 4th or second last, because it at least had a little bit of intrigue to it with the traveling and things. Yeah, it makes you look for clues. It's not at the bottom. The worst story is the sick thing that happened to Emily when she was younger. But for overall, I think tape 56 was probably the weakest. I mean, yeah, it was just the connecting narrative story, so it didn't really need to be that complex, but it was just kind of the same thing repeated over and over. One guy sits in a room watching a tape and then he disappears. Next guy sits in the room, watches a tape, he disappears. And then, you know, continue that same setup every time. And then they just all died. There's no follow through. Overall, collectively, I really enjoy this VHS film. Personally, I have a short attention span, so a collection of short stories is always going to be a winner for me. And I like the whole, you know, VHS found footage aesthetic, so I think it works well. I personally like found footage stuff because it makes it feel more real, you know? It feels like you're seeing the story unfold through the eyes of the character. You're not just a passive viewer watching the character do stuff. You're experiencing it from their point of view, which I think is more effective in a way. That's all I have for Movie Review Monday for this week. Let me know what you think of this movie if you've seen it. If you made it this far, thank you for watching. Please subscribe. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll catch you next time. Bye!